Compound selectors allow you to be very precise when formatting content on a web page, as they allow you to specify a precise position of elements within the page structure. For example, a compound selector can be created that will affect an H1 tag, but only when it exists within a specific div tag. Let's take a look at how this works on our web page. I'm beginning this video with the compound_selectors.html file already open on my page. And what I'd like to do is begin creating some compound selectors that are going to let me format some of the different areas of my document. So what we're going to do is we're going to start up here with our heading. So I'm going to click up here, and the heading that we currently have, you can see this is an H1 or a heading 1 tag. This currently has some text that's going to appear in our document. And one of the things about this is that I do in fact want to be able to have the content in that heading, but I really don't want the text to display. So I'm going to show you a trick that we can use to change how that appears. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click within that heading 1 tag, and we're going to come over here and create a new CSS rule. And because of where I was clicked, it's automatically creating a compound selector. So let's just analyze this for a second. This is creating a compound selector that is going to affect any link within any H1 tag, within any header tag, within the container div tag, within the wrapper tag. So this is being incredibly precise and incredibly specific in how it's going to format the content. Now, I, in all honesty, don't want to be that specific in this example. So I'm going to click less specific twice. So I now have header H1A. And I'm actually going to remove the space and the A after the H1. What I want to do at this point is I just want to affect my H1 tag within the header tag. And that's going to allow me to only format an H1 when it appears up here. Because let's be honest, there's a really good chance that further down on your web page you may use an H1 in a different section. So this compound selector is allowing me to affect the H1 tag, but only when it appears within the header. That's exactly what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start formatting this. So let's go ahead and go into the box property for a second. I'll move this down so we can see what we're doing here. I'm going to set the width of that H1 tag. We're going to change that to 130 pixels. And then I'm going to change the height to 87 pixels. That looks good. We'll click apply just so we can see what's going on here. And we can see that we have in fact changed the width, but it's really being squished quite a bit. And that's okay for what we're doing right now. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to tell this div to float left. And when I do that, if I go to the float property and choose left and click apply, you can see now it's getting very confusing here. But essentially what I've done is I've taken that left heading div and I've floated it to the left, and we can see that this navigation is kind of flowing up and around it. But we're going to fix that very soon. What I also want to do here is, I told you before, I really don't want to see this text, but I do want it to be content of the web page, which is going to help for a number of reasons, for search engine optimization, for accessibility purposes. This being an H1 is really going to help me out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the block property, and you'll notice that I have a field here called text indent. Now let me just show you what this is normally designed to do. If I go to text indent and I type in 50 pixels and I click apply, the normal purpose of text indent is to indent the text from the left 50 pixels or whatever value I used here. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to use this as a little trick. In this field, I'm going to type negative 9,999. And when I click apply, you're going to notice that that text just disappears. And you may be wondering why I would want to do that. Well, in reality, what I want to do here is I want the text to be part of the web page, but I don't actually want to see it. So what I've done in this case is I've actually just hidden it from view. It's still there. It'll still show up in search engine results and things like that, but I'm not actually going to see it on my page, because really what I want up here is the logo. And we're going to do that a little bit later. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and that'll take care of my heading. We're going to create a couple of other selectors as well. What I want to do here is I'm going to keep my cursor where it is. I'm going to click on the new CSS rule button again. And let's change this to compound. And again, it's going to really be very specific here. But what I want to do is just click less specific twice. Now, I should point out that the navigation here and the main heading that I just hid from view is already defined as a link. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm creating a compound selector for the header H1 when it's a link. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And we're just going to do a couple of minor things here. We're going to go to the box property. We're going to change the width to 130 pixels, just like we did before. We're going to change the height to 87 pixels. And one other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the block property. And in the display dropdown, I'm going to change this to display as a block. So we're going to go ahead and click apply. And you'll notice that this is now showing up right here. So a couple of things to just remember. Display as block is telling that element to display as an entire block, whereas before the link was being displayed in line. So that's one of the differences between some of the tags that we use inside of Dreamweaver. For example, an H1 through H6 and a P tag, those are all block level elements. Whereas when you make content bold and italic, that is an inline level element. So what I've done is I've just taken this inline element, this link that is normally displayed in line, and I've told it to display as a block. So you can really switch things around that way. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And we just have a couple more to do here. I'm going to scroll up a little bit. We have all of these boxes here, these divs. And if you recall, we named each one of those just div box. You can see right here we have, within the teaser, we have div box. This one is div box as well as this one. So we want to format those appropriately. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just go ahead and click inside of one of these. I'm going to come over here, click the new CSS rule button. Again, this is creating another pretty extensive compound selector, and we're going to simplify that a little bit. What I'm going to do here is click less specific twice. So now we're at content, teaser, and box. But I don't want the P tag at the very end. So we'll just go ahead and delete the P as well as the space after it. We're going to make sure we create it in this document only and click OK. Now what we're going to do here, we're going to format these more appropriately. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and go to the box property, and in the width field, I'm going to type 250 pixels. And if you click apply, we can see that all of these boxes have now been changed to a width of 250 pixels. That's exactly what I want. We're also going to change the margin. So we'll go to the margin property over here, and in the margin right field, we're going to go ahead and change that to 40 pixels. So I'm going to go ahead and click apply. That looks pretty good. One other thing I'm going to do is in the type property where it says line height, I'm going to change that to a value of 150. And I'm going to change the value here to %. And when I click apply, that's going to change the overall height of those boxes. Now, one last thing I'm going to do here, if we go back to the box property, I don't want these stacked on top of one another. I want them aligned horizontally. So in the float property, I'm going to change this to float left. Click apply, and we can see that now all of those boxes are lined up horizontally. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And we just have a couple of real quick compound selectors that we want to do yet. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit here, and I'm going to click inside of this text here that says Jummy the Tasty Restaurant, which is our div pound footer. We're going to click the new CSS rule button. And for this one, what I want to do is I'm just going to remove the P and the space at the end for now, and we'll click OK. So this is going to affect the wrapper footer div. And what I'm going to do for that particular selector is we're going to go ahead and go to the box property, and I'm going to go ahead and change the width to 100, but we're going to change the value to %. And if you remember, this footer is not contained within that container div, so it's really going to go all the way across the page. And that's what we want. So we're also going to change the height to 200 pixels. And if you click apply, we should now see this footer div showing up over here. Now, it is looking a little confusing in Dreamweaver right now, but we're going to fix that. So the one other thing we're going to do, we can go to the margin property and we'll leave same for all selected. And I'm just going to go ahead and set the value to 0. And that'll set them all to 0. We'll click apply and then just go ahead and click OK. Now we're going to do one more thing here. And this is where it's going to get a little bit tricky to select that content. But what you could do is just, if you find the text that says Jummy the Tasty Restaurant, right now it's being wrapped around this other content, but just click within there if you can. And we're going to create one more CSS rule. And this one we're going to leave as is. It's going to say pound wrapper space pound footer space P. So we're affecting only the P tag within the footer div. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and come down to the type property. And for font size, I'm going to change the size to 14 pixels. That's going to be pretty good. I'm going to go to the box property. And for the padding, I'm going to change the top padding. So we'll uncheck same for all. We'll set the top padding to 20 pixels. Click apply. Then what we're going to do is go to the block property. And where it says text align, we're going to change this to align center. Click apply. And then one other thing is we're going to change the color of that text. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go back up to the type property. In the color field, I'm going to type pound 535353. And when we click apply, we can see that we've changed the color of that text to what you see here. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And so as you can see with compound selectors, there's really no limit to how specific you can be when formatting your content. Once you understand how they work, you'll be able to format and modify web pages with a lot more precision and control.